Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to give you guys my best of the Boomsday Project expansion. I pick 2 cards of every class I think are going to take hold of that class's role in the meta. And these predictions have done okay so far, so I thought I'd structure it this way rather than re-reviewing every single card. Now, for some of these classes, they have a lot of good cards, so on some it was really tough, on others, well, not so. Kicking it off with Druid, I do want to mention that basically every single Druid card in this expansion is very good. It's just a lot of them are a bit more restrictive than others. Like a decent number of them have, very good synergy with token and treant decks, but, we don't really know if those decks are going to work or compete. Even the crazy 4-mana card draw combo that's going to be the Wild Destroyer, well, that's just wild, really. I don't see this card as being game-breaking in Standard, and that's only as long as, there's not that many combo Druids, because suddenly when everyone's playing that deck, people are going to run a lot of hand minion counters like Dirty Rat effects and Transform effects to counter exactly people playing this deck. So I don't know just how overwhelmingly game-breaking some of these crazy power level Druid cards are, and that's why I kind of wanted to go a bit more general. So I think in general, the top Druid card of the upcoming expansion is the minion legendary, the Floop. So I think this card just has a wide variety of uses. It's very good in Hadronok style decks. It's very good in combo style decks. It's very good in Death Rattle style decks. It's very good even in heavy Battle Cry style decks. I mean, it's just so good in so many different areas of the game. Even if by some crazy chance it sees no play in the upcoming expansion, it's a card you're going to have to go back and take another serious look at every single time there are changes to the game, either balance changes, cards added, new expansions, whatever you may. This card is going to have to be relooked every single time that happens because it's that good. And the second Druid card I wanted to pick is the ramp card, the Biology Project. It might seem like giving mana crystals to your opponent is not an ideal thing to do, but with the amount of people that play aggressive style decks and they basically lose them and run out of cards in their hand, well, a card like this is just absolutely perfect. Druid, all it really tries to do is stall until it has enough mana crystals and enough pieces of its combos or control cards, I guess, to just stabilize or end the game. And this just helps you get there faster while it doesn't help your opponent very much at the same time. I think this card is going to be played in a lot of Druid decks moving forward. Even though it might not look very good, you're going to be surprised about this one, I guarantee it. Hunter, I think the Necro Mechanic is an extremely good card. There's a lot of already pretty powerful Death Rattle effects for Hunter, and this is a well-statted card. Notably, there are a lot of cards that generate Goblin Bombs, and Mech Hunter's a thing, and Goblin Bombs are mechs. So the idea is you play this in some kind of mech face hunter utilizing Goblin Bombs, and it is ridiculous. It is like Pyroblast level ridiculous. I think the card is going to take a little bit of time kind of like shape up in that deck. It's going to be a completely new deck, so there's going to be lots of revisions before it really gets a solid version, but I think the solid version is going to compete with just about anything this game has to offer. And kind of on that note, I wanted to throw in Bomb Toss. Bomb Toss is just a really good card standalone. For 2, you deal 2 damage, and you get a 0/2 Goblin Bomb that can deal further damage. It's also a minion that you can buff. It's also a mech that you could magnetize on top of. It's just so much. There's so much this card does. Now, there's a lot of Hunter cards that kind of work with these archetypes, but I think these 2 are the big components of that type. So that's why I wanted to highlight them. For Mage, I feel like Mage is largely impressed. There's like hand mage mechanics and stuff. I'm not convinced, but I am convinced that Tempo Mage is going to do better and better. And I think Stargazer Luna is going to be a card that's going to be outstanding in Tempo Mage. If you have played Tempo Mage in the past, you're looking for cards that push for board power or push for face damage that can also be used as a removal. And in either case, they're all very active cards. So if you're going to have a Stargazer Luna on 10 mana, you'll often be able to get 3, 4, 5 cards out of it. And if you're playing Tempo Mage, that is absolutely ludicrous. So this card is godlike in Tempo Mage. And yeah, Tempo Mage might not work out, but honestly, I have pretty high hopes for the deck. Next up, Research Project. Again, if you're playing Tempo Mage, you're just looking for more burn. If you consider how many burn cards there are in a Mage deck, even when compared to a control deck, how many heal cards does that control deck have? It's not a balance. Mage will always have more burn than a control deck will have healing. So if you're playing a burn/tempo mage, this card is great. If it's a control meta, it's ridiculous because you can actually mill your opponent. And if you're playing kind of an anti-aggro slow mage, being able to mill potentially a control mirror can actually be game winning as well. So the flexibility of the card and the power level in Tempo Mage, I think, is going to solidify this card. And I do want to mention that most of the other mage cards are pretty garbage. So I'm not buying into the whole spell damage bit. I don't think there's enough there. And I think those cards are not proactive enough. So I might be wrong about that whole set, but we'll see. For Paladin, I'm sold on the mechs, and I'm sold on the mechs starting from Glowtron. I think Glowtron is ridiculous. I think it might be the single best card in the set. A 1-mana 1/3 is insane. The fact that it's a mech and you can further magnetize things on top of it immediately starting off of turn 1 is ridiculous. The fact that it has magnetic allows it to be a powerful mid-range and late game addition to the mechs that you have in play, allows you to trade up. Basically, it's like the best early game card, and it's still very good in the late game. There's nothing in the game that can do that. This card is one of a kind, and it is outstanding. Second Paladin card on my list, I think most of the other Paladin cards, I wouldn't call them bad, but I think they're not like disgusting power level. So out of the pretty good set of Paladin cards, I picked Mechano Egg. Now, I've been one to overrate cards like this one in the past, in big ways, in fact, so I've certainly screwed that up. But I do think that Mechano Egg is in a league of its own in cards like this one. A 5-mana 0/5 is pretty bad, okay? I'm aware of that. But because it has the mech tag, because Paladin runs a lot of buffs by nature, and because, well, if you're playing mech Paladin, you're going to have magnetic minions being able to act as buffs, Mechano Egg is just going to it's going to deliver on that death rattle. It's just going to do it. So if it's doing that, it really allows you to have an active role in that game, even if you start falling behind, because your opponent is not going to be able to sink 13 damage into a 5-drop. So, your opponent's going to have to start using cards like Silence, cards like Polymorph and stuff. And that might suck, don't get me wrong, but you guys know Paladins, and if you're playing Paladin decks with buffs even, all of those cards are very strong against you no matter what. So I think it's pretty good. For Priest, I think Priest is not getting too many useful cards in the next expansion. However, the few that I reevaluate in this video, I think are indeed quite strong. And the first one is Topsy-Turvy. So you might think this card is not really very much, but I think after seeing some of what the other people have said about the card, I think it's actually insane. I think if you're playing a combo Divine Spirit Inner Fire Priest, it is roughly almost 100% of the time as good as Inner Fire, but it costs 0 mana and gives you flexibility to use as removal throughout the game. So it does everything a combo piece does, except it's way better and costs less mana. So without a question, it's going to see play in specifically that type of deck. And I think it'll see play in more than just that. I think just being a 0 mana spell allows you to cycle if you're using certain effects, if you're using Lyra, if you're using Auctioneer, and I'm sure there's going to be more things to come in that department. So it's just overall very powerful card, and the fact that it costs 0 mana will be a serious consideration throughout Hearthstone's history, honestly. Test Subject is another card I said was absolute garbage, and I need to reconsider this because of some of the combos that I've learned are now possible, and a lot of those combos involve you duplicating the Test Subject after playing a whole bunch of buffs on it and using spell discounts through Radiant Elementals. Now, there's a lot of variations of these combos, so I'm not going to go into too many specifics, but basically what Test Subject allows you to do, well, one, if you are playing a combo deck and you know your opponent is not running silence or hard removal, which is possible. Honestly, 2 weeks into any expansion, we know every single opponent's deck card for card, so it's not going to be hard to figure that out. We're going to know, and if that's the case, you can just use it as your win condition. But if your opponent does have removal, you can use it to duplicate or triplicate or quadruplicate the buff combo cards that you currently have in your hand. And that is pretty exciting, in fact. That is pretty interesting. So I think it's a card that is going to do much more than just maybe waste your combo and get silence. I think it's going to be a lot stronger than that. For Rogue, I think the Necrium Blade is very good. I don't have anything particularly in mind on what you'd use it, but it doesn't really matter. It's a 3-mana 3/2 weapon that's solid. It's an odd card that's solid because Odd Rogue has a very good base, even though it doesn't have that many death rattles. Doesn't even matter, really. And yeah, it has the additional effect of death rattle stuff, which is potentially game-winning. It's very, very strong, and it's an effect you have to revisit every time more death rattle minions are introduced into the game. So just very, very good stuff. Rogue does not have a whole lot of other safe cards, I would say. A lot of the other Rogue cards are very deck-specific, and I'm not crazy about them. But Academic Espionage, I think, is just overall too powerful to ignore. Shuffling 10 cards from your opponent's class into your deck and they cost 1 is incredible tempo over time, and it helps you play the mill game better. So overall, I think this card is going to work in some form or another, and when it works, it's going to stomp. It's going to crush your opponent. This card is extreme power level. For Shaman, I think the Shaman legendary spell has certainly been underrated by most people. The Shaman legendary spell is just so easy to use when you're playing Shaman, and that's what makes it so powerful. This effect is currently kind of in the game through a dungeon run card called like the Wish, which fills your board with legendary minions. It's not quite the same, but it's very similar because Shaman has a pretty easy time populating the board, especially now with the other cards coming in the Boomsday expansion. So, yeah, I think this card is going to see play in many forms of Shaman, and should be kind of fun, I hope. Hopefully it won't be too oppressive. The other Shaman legendary thing is the other very good Shaman card. I think Shaman gets a lot of very good cards, by the way, but I like Electra enough to say that it's just too good. 3-mana 3/3 elemental and doubling a spell. Even if that spell is like a 1-mana garbage spell, it doesn't matter. This card is value. This card is solid. This card is elemental. This card is a good curve filler. There is nothing bad about this card. If you open up this card, you can literally put it in any Shaman deck that has ever existed, and it will be pretty good. So I imagine, with that said, in some of those Shaman decks, it will be game-breaking, and we can certainly expect that. And another legendary on my list is the first warrior card here, the Dr. Boom hero card. So for the rest of the game, your mechs have rush, and you have a cycling hero power that includes like 7 armor, 3 damage, spawn mechs, discover mechs. It's just madness. People have told me this card they don't think is that good. They're insane. This card is ridiculous. Dr. Boom Mad Genius is going to be the single defining card that is going to solidify Mech Warrior in any meta moving forward. Any meta. I think this is wild level broken. So yes, cross your fingers so you can open one, I guess. And the other warrior card I think is very good is one that discovers a bunch of mechs. The way I think about this card is, it's like, yeah, well, if you're playing Mech Warrior, discover a bunch of mechs. That's good, right? Yeah. Yep, that's good. That's all that needs to be said about it. It is good. Now, one thing you need to consider is how good is this card when you're not playing Mech Warrior? Is it still good then? And I would say yes. If I was playing like Taunt Warrior or something, I think Omega Assembly is pretty good. It's just an extremely high value card, and it helps you in the early game if you draw badly. Nothing wrong about that. Honestly, there's nothing wrong about that. This card is flexible enough to use in versions of Warrior other than Mech Warrior, so it just must be completely ridiculous in Mech Warrior. That's my thinking. Omega Agent is my first pick for Warlock top cards. There are hand buffing effects in Warlock, by the way, and those cards nearly made the top 2 for Warlock, so I think those cards are pretty good. Omega Agent, even if it doesn't get any kind of buff, even if it gets like really no support whatsoever, you're looking at 5 mana, 12, 15 in stats if you turn 10 plus. Control Warlocks can make it to turn 10, and Control Warlocks can clear the board for anywhere between 2 and 4 mana very easily. Very easily. So it is the single most crushing game-swinging card I have ever seen. It allows you to clear nearly any board and still play this card on the same turn. That level of a game swing, you'll shit your pants. Okay, this card is going to ruin your pants. That's what I'm saying. This card is so crazy. This is one of the best cards in the whole expansion. This might be one of the best cards in all of Standard. The Solarium, I think, is also worthy of a candidation here for top 2. I think is a very good card. I don't know if it's quite as flexible. It's obviously a complete and no-brainer auto-include in any kind of zoo, aggro, or mid-range Warlock deck. But other than that, I'm not sure how good it is. I think I'd have to put this card in like Reno Warlock or something like that and really do like 50 games or something to understand just how good it is. I think it might be good enough to see play in every single Warlock deck that has ever been made, except for maybe some choice combo Warlocks. That's about it. It's extremely high power level, but I don't know if it's like 100% of Warlock decks or like 50% of Warlock decks. So we'll see about that in practice. As for the neutrals, I had to put this little guy on my list here that reduces the cost of the mechs in your hand. Now, this is a bit of a tough call because I feel this card goes hand in hand with Mecha'thun, and I do have faith in our new mechanized god Mecha'thun. I do have faith in him. I think that's going to be a thing. I think it's going to be a very powerful thing, in fact. I think it might be too powerful of a thing. Let's forget about that for now. It is this card that enables Mecha'thun to be good. Mecha'thun standalone is not good enough. There's not enough good combo potential there. But with hand discounts for further follow-up combos, I think it is good enough. And I also think this card is good enough to run in most of the full mech zoo / control decks that we can imagine we'll end up seeing. So that's why I want to highlight this card as the best neutral card and not Mecha'thun or anything else. I think it's this card that is more enabling into the meta than the other counterparts. And of course, Ziliax. I couldn't ignore this guy for my second pick on the neutral best of. It's just too good. If you see the deck recipes, they're currently in the game, by the way. If you see the deck recipes, Blizzard has placed Ziliax in decks with no other mechs. So what does that tell you, right? It's just like good enough as a standalone card. The way I think about it is a lot of the time when I want to use like a removal spell and I get something at the end, I'm pretty happy about it. So this is kind of like doing 3 damage to a minion and gaining 3 life and getting a taunt and probably gaining more health later. So it's kind of scary to see it that way because if a card like this is good enough to see play in a deck without any mechs whatsoever, it seems like it might be pretty damn busted when you actually are playing mechs and you actually do utilize the magnetic side of Ziliax. So that's what's up. I'm sure some of you guys have some conflicting opinions and I would love to hear them, and I'd love to see who ends up being on the right side when the expansion is released. Until then, I'll see you guys tomorrow.